Cartel Wives, Chapter 33.
Bringing down El Chapo.
Holy.
Olivia. When Judge Castillo sentenced Junior and Peter, he acknowledged the risks they'd taken, recognizing that even though they were getting 14 years, they were actually leaving with life sentences. He said, "You and your family members will always have to look over your shoulders and wonder every time you're outside in a vehicle and you see a motorcycle come up behind you, if that is the motorcycle that is going to take your life."
Mia. At the time, those words were cold comfort to me. But now, I realized that he wasn't just stating the obvious, that what Peter and Junior had done was nothing short of putting their lives on the line. He was also recognizing our husbands, and by extension us, as people, not criminals.
Olivia.
Wait.
He,
I was
as
distracted.
much as
Who was recognizing them? Who recognized them as people?
At the time, those words were cold comfort to me.
that even though they were getting 14 years, they were actually leaving with life sentences. He said, "You and your family members will always have to look over your shoulders and wonder every time you're outside in a vehicle and you see a motorcycle come up behind you, if that is the motorcycle that is going to take your life."
Mia. At the time, those words were cold comfort to me. But now, I realized that he wasn't just stating the obvious, that what Peter and Junior had done was nothing short of putting their lives on the line. He was also recognizing our husbands, and by extension us, as people, not criminals.
Olivia. He, as much as anyone, realized that we'd all be living the rest of our lives in grave danger. And because of that, Junior and Peter were going to be taken away to two of the most secure prisons in the country.
Mia. Under the umbrella of the Federal Bureau of Prisons, there's a little-known initiative called the Witness Security Program. Created in 1970 to protect informants who testify against drug traffickers, terrorists, members of organized crime, and other major criminals, it now serves only 500 inmates, which is less than 0.5% of the U.S. prison population. Because they're typically involved in ongoing federal investigations, these inmates are safeguarded with the highest levels of security and are kept at prisons off the radar. If there's even the slightest risk to them, whether from the outside or the inside, they're relocated to another prison immediately. Their identities are secret, their families are typically in hiding, as we'd be, and when they're released, they enter the Witness Protection Program and are protected by the U.S. Marshals.
Olivia. When Junior and Peter left sentencing, they were taken almost immediately to the separate federal prison to serve their 14-year sentences. For 6 of those years, however, they were credited for the time they served, meaning they'd see an additional 8 years behind bars. Right now, they live with former mob bosses, drug traffickers, hitmen, and kidnappers. They're surrounded by organized criminals, so in many ways, it's not that different than the life they'd lived before, except that each of these men is now a federal witness.
Mia.
They in there with Sammy the Bull and all of these other high-profile cooperators.
Their cooperation didn't stop when they went to jail either. They've kept working with the feds and signing extradition papers, leading to the arrest and extradition of cartel members including Mayito Flaco, Mayito Gordo, Felipe el Ingeniero, Cabrera Sarabia, Alfredo Vasquez Hernandez, a.k.a. Alfredo Compadre, Tomás Arevalo Renteria, La Puerca's sister, Guadalupe La Patrona Fernandez Valencia.
La Puerca's sister even got it, boy.
and El Mencho,
That's a long list, boy.
its biggest cases. Mocomo's scheduled trial in February 2016.
Olivia. Before the trial date, the U.S. attorney from D.C. visited Junior with Mike Ferreira because they wanted my husband to be one of the main witnesses. There were several other witnesses, but the difference was that Junior's a U.S. citizen, and not only does he speak English, but he actually trafficked 1,800 kilos of cocaine he received from Mocomo into Washington, D.C. With Junior on the stand, jurors were going to be astounded at how close the cartel boss's drugs hit home. I did not want my husband to testify, and I told him as much. Somebody might kill us all, I said. He took me seriously, but he was firm. Liv, he said. They might reduce my sentence because of my testimony. A few more years home with our children could make a world of difference for them. That was just like Junior. There's nothing he wouldn't risk just to be there for his children. My worst fears came true before the trial, though. The witness list was leaked, and the family members of 2 cooperating witnesses were killed.
Dang.
One was the wife of Chino Anthrax, one of Chapo's main hitmen, and the other was Ray Zambada, El Mayo's brother's son. Granted, these murders both happened in Mexico, but I knew the cartels could easily cross the border, so I didn't feel safe. Still, nothing could change Junior's mind about testifying.
They act like the twins brought down the towers. Everybody was over there testifying. Chino Anthrax testifying. Mayo's son testifying.
He was determined, and the U.S. attorneys from D.C. and Chicago even debriefed him to get him ready for the stand. It never happened, though. The morning of the trial, Mocomo's attorneys learned that Junior was on the new witness list. We suspect he looked at his name and realized his case was sunk, that it was a slam dunk for the prosecution. So Mocomo pleaded out at the end of February 2016 and was sentenced in April to life in prison.
So Buddy pleaded out because he saw the list and said, me jodí yo, this guy can bury me. So Mocomo saw Jay on that list and he was like, I'm cutting a deal.
Mia. Olivia called me in April 2016 to tell me about a murder case she'd just seen on the news. She said 8 members of an Ohio family had been found shot, execution style, at their rural home. The hitmen left 3 young children, including a 4-day-old, alive, but the rest were pretty much slaughtered.
Dang.
Authorities found hundreds of illegal marijuana plants around the property, and a link to a Mexican cartel was suspected. That poor family, she said. This is a nightmare. Yes, I said. And we can't let it happen to us. Still, this is our life, and it's a real possibility, especially with the extradition of Joaquin Guzman Loera, aka El Chapo, the most wanted man in the world.
Olivia. During the first couple of years Junior was in prison, he'd sometimes get really serious, look at me and say, "They're going to find Chapo." "There's no way," I'd tell him. "He's too well hidden, too powerful." Year after year, though, Junior insisted that would change. He'd say it to me, the feds, and his lawyers. Nobody believed him, and they'd laugh and say it would never happen. After a while, everyone was so sick of hearing him, they'd all tell him at the same time, "Shut the fuck up."
Mia. Chapo had always been a ghost to me. When we were in Mexico, I'd overhear conversations between him and my husband and Junior, but I'd never met him. All I knew was that he played a huge part in their business, and every conversation with him was full of personality and ended really pleasantly. If he was just some voice way off in the distance to me, I imagined he was phantom-like to the world as well. There was no way anyone would ever haul him in.
They was on him. They was looking for him. They was trying to grab his ass. He was escaping through secret pathways and shit under bathtubs.
Olivia. But, sure enough, on February 22nd, 2014, it happened. El Chapo was captured by Mexican police at a beachfront hotel in Mazatlan.
Got him.
When Mia and I found out, you could have picked our jaws up off the floor. We knew it was almost unbelievable, but in this crazy life of ours, anything was possible. When the news settled in, though, the whole thing became nerve-wracking. I went to visit Junior that weekend, and we were sitting in the visiting room watching TV. Chapo was on every channel, with Junior and Peter's faces plastered next to his. Every time the guard changed the channel, whether it was the Spanish channel or CNN or whatever, you'd see the same thing. It was terrifying, and as I held hands with Junior, trembling, I started to think once again. My life has been hell since the night we sat at the kitchen table and decided to cooperate. And it's never ending. Was this really worth all this stress and...
Bro, think of the irony in that. It has not ended. It has not ended. It just keeps fucking going. It's like perpetual hell. It just keeps going. It keeps going. It keeps going. Some of the suggestions, maybe in hindsight, but life don't work in hindsight. Ain't no go back. You can't change it. You know, but there was a lot of questions and comments today in the chat about what coulda, shoulda, woulda been. Cause they could have escaped. They could have ran off. They could have changed their whole thing. They could have made a different decision. They made the decision that they thought was right, and they paid for it how they paid for it. So imagine what those other possibilities could have been. They could have been bad. They could have been amazing. Who knows? It hasn't ended yet, bro. So she's questioning this in 2017. She's questioning this like, man, when is this shit gonna end? Was it worth it? And it's still going on in 2024.
Plastered next to him, and it's never ending.
Crazy.
Was this really worth all this stress and heartache?
Was
Mia.
it worth it?
Then, on July 11th, 2015, El Chapo escaped, like Houdini himself, from his prison cell through a mile-long tunnel that had been burrowed underneath his shower stall and led to a nearby house.
Bro, that's some comic book movie shit right there, boy. Real talk. You know what I mean? Like the tunnel, the little motorcycle, the whole jab. That is some Marvel shit right there.
I was visiting Peter in prison the next day, which was a Sunday, when a prison security guard walked up to the table where we were playing a game with our kids. "I'm sorry," he said. "I'm gonna have to cancel your visit." "Why?" Peter asked, shocked. This hadn't happened in years. "Chapo was captured. We have to lock you up for security. And we're worried prisoners are gonna start rioting." My heart dropped. I kissed Peter goodbye and was escorted out of the prison, and as soon as I felt the cold air against my skin, I lost it. Sure enough, that fear of the unknown that had haunted me for years crept up once again. I didn't talk to Peter for almost a week, but I saw his face everywhere on the news, and it was heartbreaking. All I could think was, I want more than anything to talk to him about this, but I just couldn't. Then I'd call his lawyer, who was encouraging, and said lots of helpful things, but he still didn't know what would come out of this situation.
Olivia. I called my lawyer too, and he mentioned that Junior and Peter were going to have to testify against Chapo. Because of that, it may be time for you to go into the witness protection program, he said. That was the last thing Mia and I wanted to do with Junior and Peter still locked up, so I wasn't convinced. If we do that, there's no guarantee we'll be close to them, I said. It might be smart, he answered. For the first time ever, I was starting to get a bad feeling that he might be right.
So remember, they turned down witness protection initially. Now they're imploring them like, yo, it's getting thick, it's going down. You know, they got the man in a dungeon somewhere. Maybe it's time for y'all. And I'm surprised that they even offered it to them, because really I figured they would be like, oh, we wipe our hands clean of you because you turned us down initially. The fact that the option is still on the table, I'm surprised by that.
Mia. Safety is always a concern for us. Olivia and I each have dozens of email addresses. One for our kids' teachers, one for our families, one for corresponding with each other about this book. When we call the cable company to report a problem, we have to remember which phone number we've given them. We even hire private investigators every few months to make sure there's no trace of us out there. In the weeks after Chapo escaped, Junior and Peter were all over the news.
It's a lot of counterintelligence, counter-security shit, man, that they doing over there. Some I spy shit going on over here.
Witnesses started coming out of the woodwork, and word about the case spread. People started playing songs called narco corridos, describing what the cartels would do to Junior and Peter if they found them. On blogs, people began threatening our families.
We need to see what them songs is about. We need to do a reaction to them records. Hopefully we don't get smashed with a copyright.
Average Joes who hadn't known who Chapo was for most of their lives wore shirts and hats with his face on it, and people dressed up like him for Halloween. I was disgusted. I couldn't believe people were looking at the most dangerous man in the world, one who'd killed an obscene amount of people, many of them innocent, as a celebrity.
He's a hero for a lot of people, you know what I'm saying? But I tell you this, you want the underdog to win when you're an underdog, right? You want them to come out on top. But you don't want them doing dirty shit to children and innocent people and women. You don't want that collateral damage, right? But that collateral damage is a part of life and is a reality of war that has been between countries, as well as it is between factions, as well as it is between gangs, even law enforcement agencies that ride down on each other. But if the word is true that these guys were into underage girls and shit like that, like that underdog glory to me goes out the window, and you can't be one of them guys that I want to glorify. That's a whole different kind of low right there. That's a personal, evil, animal low right there. You know, not even animal, beyond animal, past slug. That's not an act of war where a whole bunch of people go down, innocent people go down. That's not a good thing either. But to make decisions in your own home, in your own bedroom about underage girls and stuff like that. Like, I'm trying to say this in the most, not get demonetized or knocked off the channel. I'm hoping y'all follow me right now. Once they get to that level, like once y'all at that level, like, oh man, I don't care what you did. It doesn't matter what you did, man. There's, I take what I take from it. That's it, Felix Reyes in the chat said he was a hero for the twins at one point too. Yeah, I guess. Maybe. Or he was a plug. And again, we're sold what we're sold, and we only know what we know. I think of Benazir Bhutto. Benazir Bhutto, she was assassinated, and she had served time in all kind of dungeons, and she went through it, She was, to some, a freedom fighter, to some, an evil dictator, But I remember growing up seeing them demonize her on American television and put her perp walk moving slow and just make her look evil. So in my eyes, it was like, oh, that lady's like some kind of wild terrorist. I didn't know the story. I was just seeing her image on TV. Then I watched her documentary, Budo, and I said to myself, they totally painted a picture of this woman as something that she wasn't to me. And that's when I understood propaganda in a different way, and I understood programming and how they push things on the television to the people to make it look a certain way. But there's people that this guy's a hero to, and I'm not mad at you. He's your hero. That's cool. But if the rumors are true that he dealt with underage kids, then he's off my list of super gangsters.
I couldn't believe people were looking at the most dangerous man in the world, one who'd killed an obscene amount of people, many of them innocent, as a celebrity. Needless to say, all of this put Olivia and me at a huge risk. In 2014, we felt more exposed than we'd ever been.
Olivia. Chapo was in a Mexican prison for most of 2014. I've been to jail in Mexico, and believe me, it's different than in the United States. Someone like Chapo could have anything he wanted. money, his business, even women. In Guadalajara, we used to live near a drug kingpin named Caro Quintero, and our neighbor said he'd come home from prison to his mansion on the weekends. Mia and I knew people were going to help Chapo while he was locked up, and that's why we weren't at all surprised when he escaped.
Mia. Chapo got out through a hole in the shower floor of his prison on a Friday morning in the middle of July 2015. That weekend, Olivia and her kids were in town to visit me and Peter, and at first we all thought it was a hoax. Then, once again, we started seeing Junior and Peter's faces all over the news channels, and our lives became a big three-ring circus.
Olivia. "What are you going to do? He's out there," said Mia. "We'll be fine," I said. "We've been living this life for so long. We've been keeping ourselves safe for years and years." I always liked to sugarcoat everything, so I didn't want anyone to worry about us, but the truth was, we were terrified. Chapo had all the discovery of what exactly our husbands had said throughout their cooperation. In the drug world, betrayal is the ultimate death sentence, and we were literally driving ourselves crazy just thinking about it. It's like we became prisoners in our own minds.
Mia. We didn't stop feeling that way until the Mexican Navy's Special Forces captured him in northwest Sinaloa on January 8, 2016, just over 6 months later. Soon after that, Peter and Junior signed his extradition papers, which was so nerve-wracking. I kept thinking, when Chapo's lawyers receive them and see Junior's and Peter's signatures, he's going to lose it.
I think by that point he had lost it already. If you say he had all the discovery and knew what was coming, the extradition paper is just the cherry on top.
Damage was done, and we all waited nervously.
Olivia. Just over a year later, on January 19th, 2017, El Chapo was extradited to the United States. The next day, he pleaded not guilty to 17 indictments, and he's now in solitary confinement at the New York Metropolitan Correction Center in Manhattan. If Chapo stands trial, Junior and Peter will serve as the star witnesses against him, and their conversations on tape will serve as the damning evidence needed to convict him to the full extent of the law.
Mia. Because of that, Liv and I thought long and hard about going into the witness protection program. Now we have no choice but to enter that next chapter in our lives. We thought we could wait until our husbands are released from prison, but as mothers, we have to protect ourselves and our young children from the harsh realities we face. Chapo living on U.S. soil is very different than him hiding out in Mexico. Some of his kids live in the United States, and our husbands are going to be the star witnesses against him. How are we to know something won't happen to us before then?
So much family, so many people going to court proceedings, so many people crossing in the hallways, running into each other in bathrooms. Same way you ran into all them connections, ran into all those good relationships. Just as easy to run into somebody that let the cat out the bag on you.
Olivia. With Peter and Junior being the only people who've gotten Chapo on tape, the case officials were pulling together in Chicago was the strongest one. But I guess the U.S. attorneys in New York City fought a little harder to get him there. Mike Ferreira worked like crazy on this case since 2008, and more than anyone, we thought he deserved it. His time and attention were incredible. He and his team put their blood, sweat, and tears into getting Chapo, and if anyone knows the ins and outs of the case, it's the Chicago office. The reality of the situation is that we're terrified about Chapo being anywhere in the United States. When they extradited Vicente, we were scared out of our minds. The thought of Chapo here produces a much, much deeper feeling of fear.
Mia. Our husbands are the ones who put Chapo away, and his people want revenge because of it. Mexican cartels contain the most ruthlessly violent individuals in the world. All the people at the top believe in is making money and having power, and they'll do whatever it takes to hold it.
Olivia. Our husbands felt differently. They didn't think that world was worth losing their lives for. They wanted to walk their daughters down the aisle and watch their sons grow into extraordinary men. They just didn't believe in the cartel life any longer, and neither did we. But El Chapo did, and that's why he, and not our husbands, will die behind bars.